Hi, Christos Paloukas here, performance engineer at Pressidium Managed WordPress Hosting, here again from my own home with my friend Jesse Friedman. Jesse Friedman's been in the WordPress community for a long time too, just like some of my guests. How long now, Jesse?
Man, going back to 2003 or 4?
Wow. I'm not gonna do the
Yeah,
math, but that's like long. I finished school in
long time.
2009, so that's long.
Making me feel like an old man.
I don't know, it happens to me too, but I guess it's more of a
Yeah,
how you feel kind of thing.
that's true. It's true.
So before WordPress, you did a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I was building websites all the way back in high school. A
Yeah.
lot of my friends had jobs scooping ice cream or doing, other things like that, and I was building websites for local businesses, just trying to get, some cash and getting to know the web a little bit. It was cool.
Yeah, that's great. You got your foundation out of the way, like while other people were scooping ice cream, like you say. I worked at Jewel-Osco. That was my first job. Is that still a thing in the States? I haven't been to the States for 12, no, 14 years.
Oh, I don't even know what that is. Julasco?
Yeah, it's a grocery store. Well, it was. It might not be
Ah,
anymore.
okay.
It's a grocery store with a
Out
cart pusher.
Illinois?
Illinois,
Yeah.
just outside
No,
Chicago.
so out here in New England, we have a few different types of grocery stores, but mostly the one you're looking for is Stop and Shop, I think is probably the more prominent one
Oh,
out here.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Website stuff I didn't really do. I did MySpace, so I wrote my own HTML for my MySpace page, but I was more of a I'm the, that nice guy that's gonna come over and fix your computer.
Oh, yeah, that's where I got into a lot of trouble that way. I actually built my first website in a web design class in high school. And from there, I just, I'd always been tinkering with computers and building them and playing around with them. Since I was like 5 years old, I remember I had an old DOS-based computer with the big
Oh,
floppy disks.
oh
Um,
shit.
so when I started building websites, all of a sudden it became, well, can you also help us set out our printer and get our VoIP going and all these other things, dial-up DSL. I mean, this is going back to the 90s when the internet was a very different place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I ended up kind of doing this freelance web design, IT kind of setup. I had grown up in New York City, and
Okay.
then when I hit high school, my parents moved us to Cape Cod. And so New York City is it was Queens, so it was a very noisy, busy place. Then we went to Cape Cod, which is a very old fishing village type setup with driven by tourism. So in the winters, the population is the town that I grew up in. It was like 3,000 people. In the summer, it was like 12,000 people. But they they enacted all these laws to keep everybody kind of like stuck in the 60s and 70s, and so it made the town very beautiful. You couldn't like build new houses. There was only one fast food restaurant allowed in the town at all. So they kept these like other like corporate entities out. But it also kind of left everybody stuck in that time period too. So no one had a website, which meant that building websites back then, like I had more customers than I knew what to do with.
Sounds like an opportunity, like a crazy opportunity though. I get what you mean by getting in trouble with that whole sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
but still, you got all the experience from that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was really helpful. And I ended up started taking college classes in high school as well because I kind
Okay.
of ran out of technology classes to take back then.
Like advanced
And
placement
then
AP.
no, I just went to the. It was really great because there was a community college on Cape Cod called Cape Cod Community College. We called it Four Cs. And
Okay.
the thing about that was is that the professors from like Harvard and Boston University and all them, they would freelance basically at Four Cs. So you'd get these like really high-end professors going and summering on Cape Cod and taking, teaching a few classes. So you got to learn really, really well. And so, anyways, I just signed up for him. I was the only
Yeah.
one my age group, but I just signed up for him and just paid for him.
That's
It was
amazing.
really great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
amazing. That's amazing for a child or for a young adult that age.
Hmm.
I don't know if I would have taken the same path.
Well, back then
Um,
it was, the late 90s, so the internet was just getting born, but everything you were still learning about web design itself was in books. You would download an IDE. I used Homesite back then. You'd learn HTML, PHP, all that. And yes, there were some websites that documented the different types of code and the functions and things that you wanted, but it's not like today. And it certainly wasn't with full of forums and people asking questions and getting, bespoke code samples or things like Chris Coyer's CSS tricks is amazing, right? Because you can actually like play with the actual code inside the browser. None of that stuff existed back then. So
okay.
taking classes in person was actually the fastest way to get your education in that area.
Is that what led to you being an academic?
Well, what's funny is I graduated from Johnson and Wales University in 2005
Mhm.
and immediately got a job building Flash websites. That's a good conversation to have too.
Oh,
And
Flash.
then like yeah, about 6 months after I graduated, the head of the graphics department called me and said, "Hey, do you want to start teaching?" And so I said, "Absolutely." I came in and I had this really surreal moment because I went back to school with many of the students that I had just taken classes with. And they were very surprised to see me standing at the front of the classroom. The thing about teaching, though, I'll tell you, is that you've never learned a subject as well as when you've had to teach it. So
Definitely.
all these parts of HTML and CSS, that's where I kind of really started teaching. But then I ended up developing classes in JavaScript and WordPress, and I wrote a book on WordPress that got adopted as a curriculum. But when I really
Awesome.
just started was HTML and CSS. And what's funny is because I knew how to write HTML, I knew the proper ways to write CSS, but like little tiny details like HTML attributes and parameters and the names for these things and how a tag works, knowing that what HTTP actually stands for, these like little things, like you kind of skim over them, right, and you just jump right into writing code because that's the exciting part. But when I had to
Yeah.
actually sit down and build a curriculum, it's like, oh wow, I'm going to actually take the time to to teach this to someone else. I better understand it. So that I think really kind of accelerated my own personal development faster than anything else.
That's cool. Yeah, you could definitely overlook like all the underlining technologies if you're just going into, I don't know, WP admin or well, at the time it wasn't WP admin, but anyway, I'm gonna use this example.
Yeah.
WP admin, and start, developing without really knowing what things mean. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't even know at what extent you really need to actually, be considered a professional, but it's really important if you ask me. There has to be a foundation.
I think so too. Yeah.
Uh,
It helps you to understand everything else better because the thing is that you don't know what you don't know. And so in discovering these things, it makes it a lot easier for you to research and try to, to look up the things you need to find. Otherwise you're kind of just hunting and pecking around.
yeah, for sure.
Uh,
So I'm gonna segue into the first like question, even though we
yeah,
already asked a bunch of questions. You talked
sure.
about your experience as an academic, as a professor at Johnson and Wales University, and I'm gonna ask, how did that experience as an educator shape the way you approach innovation within WordPress products and in the whole open source community?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the whole concept of teaching helps you, but then when you actually sit down with a student and you try to help them understand something, you become deeply empathetic to their scenario. And so every
Oh,
single student has a different story. They come from a different background.
yeah.
They've learned certain skills, but some haven't. And when you're teaching a classroom, 20 or 30 kids, some of them, like me, were building websites for years already and were there just to kind of refine their skills. Some of them had never done anything like that. And a lot of them were taking a web design class because it was a core requirement, but they really just wanted to
Okay.
focus on graphic design or things like that. So when you start to understand that there is this melting pot of different skills in a classroom, it kind of is a smaller uh, microcosm of what the WordPress industry actually looks like. And so when you start to think about it from that perspective, you really get to a place where you're understanding how to build products for people. Because the thing is that I run into this all the time, depending on who you talk to in the WordPress community, they will describe the people who use WordPress very differently. A lot of times agencies talk about WordPress users as high-end developers or designers, or they have all these skills, they went to classes, they did all these things. But that actually makes up a very small segment of WordPress users. Across the entire ecosystem, we're talking about millions and millions of websites. Many of them, vast majority of them probably, are run by small businesses or DIYers, people who are just trying to get something done. So I think that, the first thing I ever really want to focus on when I'm trying to, run a project, build something new, innovate on something, it's really just put myself in the shoes of the people who are using it. And if you can really understand it from that perspective, then you'll understand the problems, and then you can just focus on solving them.
Totally makes sense. That's probably definitely overlooked by many too. I don't know, for example, you might be one of the only people on the podcast so far. I think there's 10 or 11 episodes I've published that have actually gone the university approach. Most of the people are self-taught.
Yeah.
Most of the people got into it like that. And some of them actually made it up the ladder pretty high doing it that way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Some of my biggest mentors are people who just didn't go to college, and it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a problem. And I see that still today, that a university education is not necessarily something that's going to guarantee you any kind of success. But, for some people, it's very, very helpful that, that structure can be quite good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's a bit different. It does open doors, having a degree. Well, it used to. At this point in IT, I guess if you have a CV, like something that you've done in the past, or maybe your own project, or even your own Git. Like I remember when I was doing recruitment in my previous position, Git was basically the main thing I would look at. Like I didn't really care. Yeah.
It's funny because I taught at two universities, Johnson & Wales and the University of Rhode Island, over a course of about 8 years. And so you'd think that I'd kind of approach my daughter, who's 17, her next step in education as you have to go to college. But I'm waiting for her to figure out what it is that she wants to do with her life. Because if she wants to be a lawyer or a doctor or, a politician or something like that, a university education is going to be incredibly important. But if she wants to, and she also has these interests in art and music and technology, and if she wants to go down that route, I'd rather spend the money on a university education. I'd rather spend the money getting her an apprenticeship. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore, but when I was growing up, you used to pay to learn a craft. In Cape Cod, there was a great example of this. It was such a, it was a fishing village, like I said before. So many people made their careers off of going out on the ocean. And so there were so many jobs related to boat maintenance and crafting things and building things or whatever. And so what you would do is you would pay to go and learn this craft. And you would go and as an apprentice, you'd pay like a small fee, and you would just take this on. It's almost like you were going to a school or a university, and you would learn from a master craftsman who knew how to do these things. And I think that that's something that we're missing these days. I would rather spend the money supporting her to go get an internship somewhere where she can learn these things from pros who are doing it every day, give her those skill sets in that area, get her a jump start, than spend it on a university that. And I'll tell you firsthand from being a professor that a lot of times technological education can be a little bit behind the times as well, because curriculums have to be written for a long time and established before they can actually go into the workflows there at the schools. So sometimes you end up getting, I'll tell you firsthand as an author too, you write a book, it's on the shelves a year later. By the time you've adopted it into a classroom, it might be 18 months, 2 years old. And so that could be a lifetime, especially around WordPress.
Yeah, in IT it's about like 3 months. 1 year is about 3 months in IT.
Yeah, right.
It's really fast. Oh, wow. You gave us a lot about your background. Let's go into the day. So now you're head of WP Cloud at Automatic, right?
That's right.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I'm going to move into the second question too, because we're going to hit the 30-minute mark and we're not even going to realize it. Great conversation though, super engaging.
awesome.
I want to know about the vision behind WP Cloud, what makes it unique in the hosting space, particularly as a cloud hosting solution, and what's the
Yeah.
benefit for businesses?
Yeah, so WP Cloud is a homegrown cloud platform that we built internally for our own uses at Automatic. So it's behind WordPress.com, Pressable, and other areas of Automatic. And so we built it for ourselves because what we knew that we wanted to do, and I say we, I wasn't working on it at the time. Barry Abrahamson and Jennifer Dodd and the folks on the systems teams are the brilliant minds behind all of this. They wanted to really build something that would distinguish itself and set a higher standard for WordPress hosting. And so there's a lot of different cloud platforms out there, but the problem that you run into with them, especially the big giants, is that you have to compete with their priorities. So if you think about weeding through virtual reality, gaming, warehouse logistics, shipping, all the other things that these cloud platforms do, website just hosting is a small fraction of that. And WordPress is another smaller fraction of that. So what we did was we set out to build something that's different, that has guardrails specifically created so that we can do what we do best, and that's hosting WordPress. So WP Cloud, as of right now, can only host WordPress. And so with those guardrails, we're able to fine tune hundreds of thousands, millions of sites without having to do them on a bespoke level. We can do them at scale. So we know that the caching that we've built is going to be at or superior than anything else out there. We know that the CDN that we're building is finely tuned specifically for WordPress. We also have something that's pretty unique, which is called automated real-time failover. It's really cool. What we do is basically take a website that's on an origin center, live sync it to another origin center. So if someone's ordering a product off of your website and there was some kind of catastrophic failure to one data center, in real time, that database would have been synced to the other origin center, and we can just reroute traffic to that. And the really cool thing is that your website would exist on that origin center with power behind it. So we don't have to wait for any kind of horizontal replication or anything like that. We have the PHP workers and CPUs waiting ready and wait to put behind that website. So in real time, we're able to move things over. And so if you combine that with all of the security hardening and everything else we do around reliability, this is why you see that hosts that use WP Cloud, like Pressable or Bluehost Cloud, are offering 100% uptime, something you don't see, because we give them the confidence to be able to do that. So really, WP Cloud is about us giving back to the WordPress community through the distribution of hosting companies a higher standard in cloud computing.
That's cool. That's a mouthful too. I love the way you describe it. I don't really have a cloud background, like especially Kubernetes oriented thing, more of a systems background. And I'm still in that phase of, oh, no, don't take like really heavy things, especially a stateful application like WordPress, and put it on something that's I guess I would say flexible. I do support. So at Pressidium, what we do is we have like clusters of servers, and what we do, not that we're in a competition kind of thing, right? So we're just having a podcast. I don't want it to turn into that. We use
no, I think there's
like,
actually beauty in the diversity of our different ways in which we service customers. It allows for us to have a friendly, competitive nature, which only allows us to like improve each other's products from afar.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like doing this with competitors too. So like what we do is like HVM virtualization in a cluster of servers. There's no single server approach. That's dumb. I mean, come on. People really have to stop doing that. Most of the hosting people, especially in Greece, everyone just, goes to Hetzner. They get a server. they set up a web server, whatever they want, Nginx, Apache. They put a database on it, and they're like, hey, I'm your hosting provider. And it's annoying, and it's going to hurt me that I'm going to say that for most cases it works, but there's like a big difference between something functioning and something working. So I think that's just functioning. It's functional. It's not actually working, especially long term. Most agencies probably figure that out the hard way. because they end up saying, hey, that's cool, I got Christos, he's gonna fix my server, I'm gonna host thousands of websites. Yeah, no.
Well, you know what I think is interesting, is that if you look at the way the industry is trending, we talked earlier about how WordPress users there's a variety of types of users, people who are experienced, but a vast majority of them are people who are inexperienced. If you look at even though they still have a very small market share in comparison to WordPress, Shopify and Squarespace are starting to shift the paradigm around hosting, or at least the concept of buying hosting. And so something that I'm hoping that WP Cloud can really make a major impact in is that we can provide the underlying infrastructure for a hosting company and take care of the management of WordPress so that they know that no matter what, it's going to be fast, it's secure, it's reliable. That can then allow that hosting company to pivot and shift towards providing a more bespoke, service-oriented solution to a customer. Take hosting out of the equation in the sense that, like, you don't need to convince people to sign up for hosting based on parameters that, you know, most customers don't really care that much about, like how many CPUs and PHP workers, things like that. Just know that it's going to work. That's what they care about. And so, you know, when you go to like a Squarespace, right, you're not buying hosting and then bolting on all these different things. You just know that what you're getting is something that's going to help you build a website, or at least that's what you think it's going to do. So what we need to do, I think, as an industry, and I think this is where WP Cloud can really play a role, is to help shift the mentality around that to help those types of customers who are DIYers. Because if you think about it, you're a business owner, say you own a market in Greece, right?
Yeah.
You're maybe you're a baker, or you're fisherman or something. I don't know, whatever. Your passion lies in actually doing that craft. But building a website, probably to you, is no more a skill set that you want than paying your taxes, or learning how to, like, you know, clean up the shop after the end of the day, right? You know, you have to stock the shelves, you have to pay your employees, you have to sweep up the floors. Like, there's so much stuff that you have to do. Building a website is not a priority for you because you don't want to be a web designer. It's not a skill that you necessarily want. It's just a thing that you know you need to accomplish to get to your goals. So I think if hosting companies can really shift towards solving that problem, and we'll take care of the infrastructure and the platform underneath, I think we can actually really turn the tide around hosting and get people really more focused on just getting experiences that they know they're going to make them successful.
Yeah, that does make sense. Especially, okay, so I can see some like added cost maybe from the baker's end, but at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper than hiring a developer, finding a managed hosting business, and doing all that work. I like how it's what you're talking about is more like for the average user, which could be anyone,
Right.
anyone with like a plain old WordPress website. And like it does leave, it's cool like in the market share kind of way, because the way I'm thinking about it right now, just like on the spot, is that like enterprise level or huge projects, which are probably perfectly fine and supported on WP Cloud too, but then they have like the option to go whatever route they want with their own people and so forth, but you still get like the majority, I don't know if it's I think it's the majority of users that just have a simple website like what you're describing, like a 5-page website.
Yeah.
Hey, this is my bakery.
I mean, we have very high enterprise level websites. We have media websites on WP Cloud. The only point I'm trying to make is that those folks know what they want. So WP Cloud is one of those things where they're going to test it, and they're going to feel the power, they're going to feel the speed. Every single time that we talk to a hosting company, they test it out. We give them an account, they throw some sites on it, they compare it against what they've been working on for years, and the first thing we get is like this pseudo sarcastic comment of, well, how did you do that? We can't even come close to that, that kind of thing. So I feel like the same kind of thing is going to happen with agencies, that agencies who are running these enterprise level sites, they're going to test WP Cloud, and they're going to feel it, and they're going to know what they want. They're going to be able to define the parameters of the hosting that they need. What I think the WP Cloud can do is really come in and help to solve that problem of, I don't know what I want, I just need a website. And then we can focus on the reliability of that, and the hosting company can focus on bolting on the tools, giving the experience, providing the support, maybe even design services on top of it that can help those customers be, successful.
Cool. To segue into the last question, just like randomly without a really good segue, because we're running low on time. We talked a lot about the customers. We mentioned the large client or large enterprise customers, small mom and pop shops, but we didn't talk about other businesses. And so you're VP of Innovation and Partner Success, right?
At Jetpack, yeah.
Yeah, Jetpack. I got caught off track. So what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for partnerships in an open source community? Like, how do you encourage successful collaboration that drives WordPress really forward? Aside from
It's a great question. Yeah, so I mean, I think that, one of the things that we have really focused on at Automattic, whether it's through Jetpack or WP Cloud or WooCommerce, is that we are fully aware that the distribution of our product is reliant on other hosting companies. If you think about it, right, WordPress.com and Pressable are not the Squarespace of WordPress, right? We actually champion and get excited about the diversity in hosting. We mentioned this before. Different hosting companies can apply their skills to different areas. They know their geographic region, they know the customers in their area, they can focus on a specific niche, they can solve things very specifically. And so through that, a lot of the work that I've done at Automattic is around working with hosting companies to help them understand that we, as a company, may have, a WordPress hosting initiative under Automattic, but what we really want to also be doing is working with them to provide a better experience for end customers. Because here's the thing, and this is something I actually talked about on my own podcast, is that a hosting company who starts selling WordPress, they are probably going to acquire that customer through some kind of marketing or advertising. Word of mouth is, a great way too. But the reality of the situation is someone's trying WordPress because someone told them, right? If you're an agency, if you're an enterprise, you probably already made a decision, you know where you're going. You're going to test different hosting companies. I'm talking about the millions of customers who are going to try WordPress for the first time. They type in WordPress hosting, maybe another delimiter, they get a result, they choose that host, they sign up. That hosting company now has a responsibility to the ecosystem, because that customer is going to have that one WordPress experience. And if it's not great, if they're not successful, they may go off and try it somewhere else. And so our mission really is to try and empower hosting companies through the distribution of Jetpack, Woo, WP Cloud, whatever, to find the services and tools that they need to make those customers successful. So whether it's security products from Jetpack or social tools or whatever, some of the best success cases we've seen is a significant reduction in churn, because Jetpack has so many tools in it. And a lot of people will say, yes, it has way too many tools. I'll argue that to the day I die, because when you disable the tool, it doesn't take anything away from you. You can just turn it off. You can just use what you want. But Jetpack is now also broken up into multiple different plugins. But the point that I'm trying to make is that end customers who are doing this themselves, they may not even know what a plugin is. So when they get into WordPress and they want to add a contact form, have you ever gone through this experience through the eyes of an end customer? We talked about putting yourself in the shoes of an end customer. You end up going into a place where you have to search for a contact form, go on the web, find out you need to add a plugin, go to the directory, you type in contact form, you get 1,000 results, then you install the plugin, and you maybe install one or two. Every one of them is different. The user interface that a person experiences between Contact Form 7, Jetpack's forms, and like Ninja forms or something like that are so wildly different. None of them are wrong or bad. It's just that the user experience is very, very different. Not to mention, where do you get support? If you install 10 plugins to do 10 different things, and you need support from 3 or 4 of them, some of them it's going to be on the forums, some of them will have a staff, some of them will just ask you to email them, and maybe it's one developer who's struggling to support this product, and it's going to take them 6 weeks to get back to you. It's kind of like the beauty of WordPress and the diversity in all those plugins and that functionality can also kind of reap a little bit of a problem within the WP admin, because an inexperienced user may have very very different experiences between those things. So anyways, long story short, Jetpack has done a lot of work to bring in that functionality for those customers in real time at the beginning of a site build, so they don't have to make decisions about plugins at first. They can get a lot of the basic things that they need to get done out of the way, and then they can go solve for, bigger, more complex problems as they become more familiar with the software. I know we're running low on time, so I'm going to pause there.
No, it's fine. It's really good content, though. I do understand all those like very general, not so specific, but general use cases. And like you said before, that is the plethora of WordPress users.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we don't really have much time left. We are going to talk in your podcast too. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely, I can't wait.
And I see us collaborating in the future again, aside from just like, your podcast and this one too. We've got good things to say, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love we can carry the conversation on into the Impressive Hosting podcast, and then if you ever want to have me back and we can do this again, I would love to be back.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to think of some more content ideas with the help of my team at Pressidium. And I'll keep you in mind. Is there anything else you want to add, maybe?
I don't think so. I think this was a great conversation. It was a real pleasure getting to know you too.
Yeah, it went well. Good energy too. We have good back and forth, I think. We explained everything pretty well too. Last question. Where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm not going to call it X, at Professor, just spelled the normal way. On LinkedIn a lot too. Blue Sky, Jesse.blog.
Okay.
That's my URL too. So yeah. And WP.cloud if you want to talk about cloud hosting.
Yeah, awesome. I'm gonna put that stuff in the show notes. And I think that's a wrap. There you go. We have Jesse Friedman, from professor to innovator to, I don't know, web developer to UI/UX expert to his current position at WP Cloud and Jetpack.
Nice.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. This is the
Thanks.
Say goodbye. Bye, everyone.